Seen demonstrations against the mishandling of the novel coronavirus epidemic by the Mario Abdo Benitez government. Brazilian police have forcibly evicted over 450 families of the landless workers movement in the southeastern state of Minas Gerais. The Central Electoral Commission of Belarus released the final election results this Friday, revealing that President Alexander Lukashenko had secured 80.1% of the vote. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. On Friday, Paraguayan trade union and social organizations mobilized to protest against the handling of the novel coronavirus epidemic by the government of President Mario Abdo Benitez. And earlier this Friday, our correspondent Osvaldo Sayas brought us the details of the mobilizations.
Greetings from Asunción, Paraguay. Social organizations have called to mobilize. Also, citizens have come to their own accord, mainly under the banner of no more corruption in the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. We can mostly see placards that make reference to different acts of corruption and lots of criticism against the Minister of Finance, Benigno Lopez, who is the brother of Mario Abdo Benitez. All of this occurs in the eve of the second anniversary of Mario Benitez's election as president. On August 15, 2018, he took office. Tomorrow marks 2 years of Mario's presidency amidst the pandemic and highly criticized management of the health crisis. It is very concerning that currently the number of cases keeps increasing and nearly 100 deaths have been reported. Social organizations will march from Uruguay Square to the center of the capital, some in cars, others in caravans. We can see that many are taking the necessary precautions to avoid the spread of COVID-19. However, the number of people that are gathering is a cause for concern. They have stressed that despite the risks, they need to take to the streets to denounce his growing government corruption since the beginning of the pandemic. The Paraguayan government has borrowed $1.6 billion, and there is a lot of criticism about the use of the money and complaints regarding corruption. This is all the information we have for the moment. Back to you in the studio.
On Friday, the president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, announced that the lockdown will be extended until August 30th due to an increase in COVID-19 patients.
We have decided that we are going to maintain the system we have today, with some corrections, until 30th of August. We have agreed with the governors that in those red zones that we saw, we are going to return to phase 1, trying to control as much as possible human circulation and contact between people.
And President Fernandez also noted the hope represented by the COVID-19 vaccine recently registered by the Russian government. Argentinian health authorities have reported over 6,000 new coronavirus cases in the last 24 hours, bringing the total to over 282,000. Meanwhile, the death toll stands at over 5,500. And also this Friday, Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez offered details on actions taken to stop the spread of COVID-19 and strengthen the national health system.
The first important achievement was the strengthening of the health system. To my left is Axel, governor of Buenos Aires provinces. If we had not worked with Axel the way we did, today, Buenos Aires' health system would have collapsed, especially the metropolitan area of Buenos Aires. We have doubled the number of beds in the ICU, and even more in other areas over this period.
And the Argentinian president noted that commercial activities have continued while observing biosafety measures.
Little by little, we resume activities, and we open stores and we open industries with health protocols. All of this has functioned wonderfully well. It must be said, in the industries that have reopened, and that have followed the health protocols, there have not been any infections. In the businesses that have reopened, the health protocols have been followed, and there have not been any cases.
Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez provided an update on the number of new COVID-19 cases of local transmission this Friday.
948 cases of community transmission have been registered in Venezuela in the last 24 hours. Of these 948 cases, 221 belong to Capital District, which is the area with the highest number of active cases so far, as well as being present the 22 parishes of the Capital District. The cases are mainly concentrated in the parishes of El Valle, in Sucre, Catria, Altagracia, 23 de Enero, El Recreo, San Juan, La Vega, Caricuao, and San Jose.
And the Venezuelan vice president also reported on new imported cases as well as the recovery rate.
64 casos importados.
Likewise, 64 cases were imported, of which 59 came from Colombia. Colombia already registers more than 5,000 cases in Venezuela. 4 cases came from Peru and 1 case came from Ecuador. That gives us a total of 1,012 cases today. President, it is worth noting that 69% of cases have recovered, of these 31,381 total cases.
The Bolivian Workers' Center, together with social movements, has suspended the general strike and roadblocks in different regions of the country following the signing of a law to prevent a further postponement of the general elections. Bolivia has seen widespread protests for almost 2 weeks following the postponement of the general elections from September to October 18th. On Thursday, following pressure from the protesters and lawmakers of the movement towards socialism, the de facto regime agreed to sign into law the guarantees against further delays to the elections. In an interview with Telesur, the leader of the Bolivian Workers' Center, the chief trade union federation of the country, stressed that workers and social movements will continue fighting to strengthen Bolivian democracy. The union leader also noted that the decision was made to avoid further violent confrontations in the country and denounced the recent terrorist attacks against offices of the federation.
Now the instruction is for all our mobilized comrades to take a fourth break in the actions, a fourth intermission, while in permanent vigil until the general elections of October 18, to ensure that the general elections are held and also to ensure that the people can exercise their democratic right to elect their next government for the coming 5 years. As of today, we declare ourselves in permanent vigil and a fourth halt to the mobilizations to follow this situation. Because here the fight does not end. The fight has begun little by little. First, the fight has been against the pandemic for our people's health and life. Then it has become the fight for the basic needs of education, work, and against a host of layoffs. These have been the main demands of the people.
And we'll be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Brazilian police have forcibly evicted over 450 families of the landless workers movement in the southeastern state of Minas Gerais. The families, who have been living, producing and working in the Quilombo Grande camp for over 2 decades, resisted the eviction by military police forces for 3 days. But this Friday afternoon, tear gas was fired at them and all residents were violently evicted. The landless workers movement stressed that many were injured in the process, including children and older persons who have not been provided with any medical attention, while at least 4 people were arrested. The police forces destroyed a school, homes and several hectares of crops. Meanwhile, in Belo Horizonte, the capital of Minas Gerais state, dozens of protesters and members of the landless movement mobilized to reject police brutality after the violent eviction. They also blamed the state governor for the criminal acts committed against the families in the midst of the crisis sparked by the novel coronavirus. The US state of California is battling several wildfires, leading to evacuations of some areas. Firefighters in Los Angeles County managed to control a huge wildfire, dubbed the Ranch 2 fire, which had led to evacuations of neighbouring communities. Officials noted that emergency vehicles will remain on the scene to monitor the fire for the next 72 hours. Meanwhile, another fire named the Lake Fire has already burned at least 3,000 acres. The fire broke out in dense forest in the Angeles National Forest on Wednesday afternoon, sending up a towering plume of smoke visible for hundreds of miles around. The raging flames have led to the mandatory evacuation of homes and other buildings in the area. On Friday evening, residents in the Italian city of Genoa joined the families of the victims of the Morandi Bridge collapse in a candlelit vigil to mark the second anniversary of the disaster. 3 marches departed from the 3 neighbourhoods most affected by the collapse and came together in the memorial area located under the new Genoa San Giorgio Bridge, a circle of 43 individual trees symbolising those who lost their lives. The site was inaugurated earlier in the day in an official ceremony attended by Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. The 2018 disaster occurred after a stretch of the Morandi Bridge suddenly gave way in a violent rainstorm, sending vehicles plunging to the dry riverbed below.
This was meant to be a community event, to allow everyone to take to the streets and embrace the relative of the victims, make them feel the love of the residents of the 3 neighborhoods who experienced this tragedy with them.
To be here all together tonight is very meaningful. We must strive to work together, and together show how much strength there is in simple people joining together for an idea.
Authorities in Norway have recommended the use of face masks on public transport following a recent rise in COVID-19 cases across the country.
In the last 3 weeks, there has been an increase in the number of reported cases in Norway, but also an increase in test activity. And we know that part of the increase can be blamed on clusters appearing at the same time, so the development does not so far imply a national flare-up.
It could be difficult to keep 1 meter distance during rush hour in the city. The use of face masks is therefore recommended on public transport in places where the rate of infections has increased and where it is difficult to keep distances from each other.
Bulgaria's Prime Minister offered to step down this Friday if legislators approve his plans for the election of a Grand National Assembly to push through constitutional amendments. Prime Minister Boyko Borisov said he would quit on the same day that Parliament approved the move, which is seen as an attempt to appease protesters who have been demanding that the government and the chief prosecutor resign. Protesters have pointed to the erosion of state institutions to serve the interests of private business and denounced the failure to bring any corrupt high-level officials to account. The PM proposed measures to make the work of Parliament more efficient by halving the number of lawmakers and imposing stricter accountability on the chief prosecutor.
It's time for a restart. It's time for wise decisions. Pursuant to Article 87, Paragraph 1 of the Constitution of the Republic of Bulgaria, and Article 76, Paragraph 1 of the Rules for the Organization and Activity of the National Assembly, political party GERB will submit a draft of a new Constitution of the Republic of Bulgaria. It is time for responsibility and determination. It's time to change, and not only the political system, and to restart the state. The need of restarting the political model can no longer be postponed.
And we have more news coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Belarus, the Central Electoral Commission released the final election results this Friday, revealing that President Alexander Lukashenko had secured 80.1% of the vote. The announcement confirmed the preliminary results issued by the electoral body. Meanwhile, the main opposition candidate, Svetlana Tijanovskaya, only managed to secure 10.12% of the vote. Neighbouring countries aligned with the interests of the United States and NATO members have refused to recognise the results and threatened to impose economic sanctions against the Belarusian government. And protests continued in the Belarusian capital Minsk this Friday following the re-election of President Alexander Lukashenko. The authorities have denounced the existence of a Western plan to interfere in the country's internal affairs on supporting violent opposition sectors to destabilise the nation. President Lukashenko has described the protests as illegal, which started following the announcement of the preliminary election results last Sunday. Police have made an unspecified number of arrests, as well as deployments aimed at preserving public safety. And the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, has stressed that he remains in the country and continues to carry out his duties.
First of all, I'm still alive and I haven't gone abroad as some respected media are hyping. The president has left the country and is abroad. It's today the 14th, and we are meeting to discuss the work of construction industry.
The leader of Lebanese party Hezbollah has condemned the agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates as a betrayal of the Palestinian cause that benefits US President Donald Trump at his weakest moment in the lead up to the elections in November.
What the UAE did was give a personal electoral favor to President Trump for him to benefit from in elections. During Trump's weakest electoral moments, according to all the opinion polls in America, it is also a personal and electoral favor for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It is imperative for me and each one of us to stand saying that this is a condemned act, and it is rejected. This is a betrayal of Islam and Arabism, a betrayal of the Muslim community. It is a betrayal of Jerusalem, of the Palestinian people and its sanctities. This is, like the Palestinians said correctly, a treacherous step and a stab in the back.
The United Nations Refugee Agency has mobilized $12 million for its emergency response for vulnerable families following the blast in Beirut.
UNHCR's priorities are to provide assistance with relief efforts, provide shelters kits including mattresses and pillows, and shelter kits such as wood and plastic sheeting. This will provide the minimum level of assistance to victim houses and flats to ensure the necessary protection.
The Turkish government declared that it plans to continue studies in the Mediterranean Sea as part of its energy exploration moves. Authorities announced that the research ship it deployed to the area at the beginning of the week would continue studies in the eastern Mediterranean Sea until August 23rd. The move has led to heightened tensions with neighbouring Greece, which considers the area part of its exclusive economic zone. Athens activated the alert level and deployed its naval forces to monitor Turkey's movements in the region. On Friday, the Turkish Foreign Minister warned that his country would respond to any hostile action against the vessel. South African Health Minister Zweli Mkhize announced 286 new COVID-19 related deaths this Friday, as well as over 6,000 new infections. This latest report takes South Africa's COVID-19 death toll to over 11,500. The African nation now ranks 5th in the world in terms of the number of confirmed cases at over 579,000. Although the number of daily infections has slowed in the country, the daily fatalities remain high. However, the mortality rate is relatively low compared to the number of cases. The Nigeria Centre for Disease Control confirmed 329 new cases of COVID-19 this Friday. With this latest update, the total number of cases has surpassed 48,400. The centre also reported 7 COVID-19 fatalities in the last 24 hours, bringing the country's death toll to 973. Nigeria is the third hardest hit nation in the African continent after South Africa and Egypt. On a positive note, nearly 36,000 patients have recovered from the virus. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but we finish with a video of the famous Cuban cartoon El Video Valdés, as this Friday marks the 50th anniversary of the creation of the popular cartoon character who embodied the Cuban struggle for independence from Spanish colonialism. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesoenglish.net, and you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Teleso English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.
¡Bestias! ¡No tiréis con ventanas!